I'm going to share my screen now with you. All right, then. We're going to start with LO3, which basically the learning outcome is to evaluate how strategic HR initiatives can be used to develop high performance organization culture. So when I say strategic HR initiatives, I think like few initiatives just pop up in your head, like, treating employees fairly, having a diverse culture and including everyone in it, then a good work environment, then good work ethics and values, proper training and development for their employees, and maybe I would say innovation and creativity within the organization and the associates, and just encouraging them to have that innovative side as well, are few of the HR initiatives that we can think of when we talk about initiatives to help develop or help develop high performing organizations. So if you speak about what we're going to go through quickly, so we're going to go through a lot of information, and some of the information might be a bit repetitive as well, but we're going to talk about in detail about it. That's why it gets repetitive later on. So obviously, when you're looking at making different changes to the HR strategies, organization culture, and cultures of high performance comes into the picture, you need to think about how it is important for having a proper organization culture and how it's HR responsibility to have that culture. Like in my previous week, we spoke about how having a toxic work environment wherein you're working 9 to probably 7, 8 in the night, loading your employees with extra work, asking them to work during even their break, free time. I feel that is a toxic work culture that goes around a lot in India as well. Whereas having a little relaxed environment, having work from home flexibility, having their associates do how they want, but also make sure that they're getting all of their work done, that might be a little relaxed work culture. So every organization has its own work culture, and I feel HR plays a very important role in doing that as well. We're going to talk about different HR strategies and initiatives that as HR of the company we come up with to make sure that changes are made. So obviously we spoke about the work culture, but also HR is responsible for employee behavior. Why? Because the strategies that you put in are going to influence your employee behavior. Coming back to the example of the cafe that we spoke about last week, we had put in a proper plan so that our associates were happy from beforehand. They knew that they're going to be paid well and they are getting compensated fairly for all of the workload that's going to come in, in the months of December and Jan, because of, it being Christmas and it being New Year's, there's going to be a lot of workload. So we came up with a proper rewarding strategy, basically, that we are rewarding our associates fairly and compensating them so that when the time comes, when the workload is too much, associates know that, all right, you know what, I have to be on the job, get my job done, do work properly because I have been paid fairly well. But if you don't come up with strategies, you might end up with some unhappy employees, some employees saying, I feel like this is too much work and it's not worth the money that I've been paid for. I might want to leave. You might have many problems coming on just because you did not have a proper HR strategy or a foundation in place from beforehand. So all of the initiatives that come up should be mutually supportive, like we spoke about last Sunday, wherein HR strategies should align with the goals of the business. If HR strategies don't align with the goals of the business, there's going to always be a confusion between what's going on for the associates as well. Because if the business goals are different to the HR strategies coming up, it's obviously not going to work out. As a business model, you will break down eventually. So talking about organization culture and cultures of high performance, I feel that every company has its own set of the way it functions, or like it says over here, it's the personality of the company that influences how people interact and make decisions and work together. Like we mentioned, toxic work environment. Associates aren't even talking to each other because they're too afraid that their manager is going to, call them out on wasting time because they're talking, or they don't even interact with each other. They're just sitting on their desk quietly doing their job. Maybe that's a boring work environment, a toxic work environment, whereas associates are interacting with each other, helping each other out, coming up with new ideas, innovation. Maybe that's a culture wherein, you're promoting more harmony within their associates as well. So culture plays a very important role in the success of the organization, 100%, because if your associates are happy and you have a positive work culture, everything's going to work smoothly and you're going to have proper returns as well. Whereas if it's a negative work environment, you might have a more higher turnover rate, wherein turnover rate meaning associates are leaving and you have to find replacements. People are not staying on the job or not even doing their job well because, they're unhappy in what they're doing. I have a quick video that shows how HR plays an important role. So I'm just going to play that for you. Let me know if you can't hear the voice, okay?
Okay.
Let's take a look at human resource management's contribution to high-performance organizations. Human resources plays a critical role in meeting the challenges of a rapidly changing, highly competitive environment. Job design can enable the organization to benefit from teamwork and employee empowerment, two of the work conditions associated with high performance. Recruitment and selection aim at attaining employees who are enthusiastic about and able to contribute to teamwork, empowerment, and knowledge sharing. High-performance organizations need selection methods that identify more than technical skills, like ability to perform accounting or engineering tasks, but also those who innovate, share ideas, and take initiative. When organizations base hiring decisions on qualities like decision-making and teamwork skills, training may be required to teach employees the specific skills they need to perform the duties of their job. In addition, high-performance organizations are developing their talent to move into positions with greater responsibility. In a high-performance organization, performance management requires making sure that employees know the organization's goals and what they must do to contribute to goal achievement. Individuals bring a set of skills and abilities to the job, and by applying a set of behaviors, they achieve results.
That was too loud in the last. So yeah, this is something that I discussed, like basically, having a proper work environment, treating employees fairly. If you're having a hiring strategy that says, all right, you're focusing on someone who can be included in the team. Just an example, if I'm hiring a specific person for a job role, maybe they're not looking at him having the perfect skills or having all the skills required. They're looking at him coming inside the team and how is he going to work or how is she going to function when she's part of the team. If you put someone who is, I'm just thinking of an appropriate example. If it's a team which has probably everyone in their mid 40s or 50s working, and you put in someone who's a 24-year-old, really fresh graduate out of college and come in and trying to work, maybe that graduate is going to feel intimidated, or maybe they're actually going to learn a lot from everyone else working in the team. And everyone else is going to work from the newly fresh graduate because they come up with fresh ideas, right? So we're seeing at how that person is going to play a part if you're going to put them in a mixture. When someone speaks about this, I think about, a jar of, you can say, blue color candies, and you're putting someone who's a red candy and seeing if it's going to function together or not. And does it look fine or not? So yeah, if you're looking at just a person or the personality, definitely you're going to hire. So training is going to be required. Training and development for that person is definitely needed. Then you come up with innovation and creativity just on how they're coming in and giving in fresh ideas and how they're going to approach, putting out their new ideas in that team as well. Moving forward on, the importance and impact. So obviously the strategies impact employee behavior because the culture shapes how associates behave within themselves in the workplace, like we spoke before. Then organizational performance. obviously, if employees are happy and everything's positive and employees' goals align with the business goals as well. So if an employee feels that, all right, I'm growing in this organization, he's going to keep doing better, he's going to perform better, he's going to give out more output compared to what we are giving him, or, he's going to make sure that we are compensating him and he's fairly giving it back, because it's a positive work culture. Obviously, if it's negative, it's going to be the opposite, right? Going on to retention and recruitment. So again, very important, significant role that culture plays within having or attracting talent, because obviously an individual is going to stay in the company if it has a positive working environment and aligns with its goals. Then decision making. So having a specific culture is going to influence the decision, obviously, because there are certain people in the organization making those decisions as well. So if they're used to that negative work environment or culture, they're going to always make such decisions. Whereas if a fresh set of ideas come in, it's going to obviously be a little conflict amongst them as well. So talking about cultures of high performance. So to come up with an HR culture or a strategy that aligns with, the organization goals to be a high performing organization, we need to see that the strategy and culture aligns with the goals of the organization, like we spoke about before. Then also think about, innovation and different kinds of creative ideas that associates can come up with, and how to even push them to think about these creativity or ideas, how to put them in a situation and, all right, this is something that we're looking at doing. For example, it's Christmas going on now, right? If there's a new HR strategy that, all right, from now we're gonna have a little Christmas party wherein you can call your family members. We want to have a proper, a family gathering. Maybe you wanna, I don't know, I'm just thinking about an idea. Have different farm animals come in as a part of the party that's happening. So in the UK, for example, what they do is, if there's going to be a family gathering or function, they hire these farm animals, wherein, because kids are coming, they can play with them, and it gets in like a family event wherein you calling your your husband, wife, kids, everyone's coming and having a good time. Innovate how we can think about different ideas. Don't want to call animals this year, want to think about something else. How to align this specific gathering with something we are passionate about. Maybe, we can help we can held like a charity event through this family event as well, wherein we are raising money for, kids who can't afford to buy themselves gifts on Christmas. Or maybe we encourage these families that they're coming in, they're having a good time, they're partying, maybe bring a gift for a kid who is not fortunate enough. So that's how we, as an HR team, have to influence our associates to give out ideas so that the changes can happen. Then throughout an high performing culture, you're going to continuously learn. So we need to come up with proper training and development ideas for our associates so that they have the right skill sets and enhance it. Looking at effective communication. So communication, not just within associates, but also communication between the hierarchy. For example, your manager giving you proper feedback and giving you proper guidance on how you're working or how you can change your working or make a few changes to how you approach certain job tasks. So that would be effective communication. And lastly, employee engagement. So obviously, engagement and employee satisfaction and employee performance goes hand in hand. So these three things I feel would go hand in hand, because if associates aren't satisfied and they're not engaged enough with the business, for example, if there's an associate working from home and he or she is not at all is not at all engaged with the business, they are not, they're not that motivated, they do not care about the mission or vision of the organization. The only thing they worry about is them getting their work, them doing it, and getting their paycheck. That's literally it. So I feel that that would be a disengaged employee, because they're not thinking about ways to improve their job or ways to streamline processes. They're just focusing, just at one thing. All right, you're giving me this task, I'm gonna do it, get it out. Gonna do it, get it out. Not anything innovative. So if employees are satisfied and engaged enough, then they will contribute better. They will come up with better ideas. They will come up with more efforts to just give out more so that the organization does well. So definitely, all of these attributes contribute to the cultures of high performance. Going forward, talking about the HR strategy and strategic initiatives, I think this was a definition we already spoke about. So how the HR strategies, plans, or outlines the HR management and how that would support the overall business strategy and the goals of the organization, and also how we align the HR practices with the strategic objectives of the organization as a whole. So we spoke about this on Sunday, how HR strategies need to be aligned with organization goals and work hand in hand as a team. And the importance of that is, if it's in sync with the overall business strategy, obviously you're maximizing the impact of the organizational success. Then we spoke about talent management, wherein how if we attract and develop and retain the talent, it's going to be good for us because eventually they're going to align with the strategic objectives and going to want to do better. Employee engagement, just spoke about employee engagement. Employee needs to be engaged, satisfied, and needs to be committed so that they are eventually working towards the goals. And adaptability and flexibility. So, like we spoke last week again, how HR strategies need to be really adaptable, wherein they need to adapt to the changing nature of the fast world that's going around. Every year you come up with new changes. There are changes to the HR strategies, there are changes to the business as a whole, how it's functioning. There are changes in the environment outside the business as well. So there's a lot of change happening. If HR strategies can't be adaptable and proactive as well, proactive because you need to be on the job with, all right, this is going to happen, this is what we see, this is our data that's showing us that there's going to be a lot of workload. If we don't compensate our employees fairly, they are going to keep complaining, or we might have a more turnover rate wherein they're leaving. So how can we come up with a strategy from beforehand? If HR doesn't be proactive or is not adaptable to those changes, it would not work, or then organization might crash eventually. Then the different strategic HR initiatives. So going to talk about the importance of developing engaging cultures. Again, we spoke about workplace engagement, how employees need to be engaged and committed to the goals of the organization. So how can we do that? We can come up with, employee recognition programs. I think I gave you an example about how I was working for an organization wherein if you did something, or, if you and me are associates and I felt that you did something or a certain job, or you helped me out with, probably an Excel sheet that I had an issue with. And I was like, this is actually really complicated. And you spend an hour with me, explaining me everything, going through stuff, and just helping me in general. I might give you certain, points wherein be like, all right, here's 50 points for you for actually helping me out. Thank you so much for being a good colleague to me. That was the employee recognition program that we had, wherein not just associates in the same level in the hierarchy, but also your managers. If your manager feel that you're doing really well, you have done this job, you have completed all your targets, and to motivate you to do better, he might just give you 100 points again. So we had this thing called point system, wherein if you give points, there was a website wherein they can go and select and buy any voucher available. Like you had every kind of company's voucher available over there, and you have different gift items available over there. So that was an employee recognition program that specific business had. Other businesses might have different recognition programs. For example, McDonald's has this employee recognition program wherein every month they have, employee of the month. So I don't know if you've noticed, when you go to a McDonald's, there, while the people are working, there's a sticker over there that has their faces on that shows, all right, employee of the month, best effort, or, there are different levels to that as well. And I feel it just motivates associates to do better when there's competition as well. And they're like, all right, you know what? I like this. I like my face on that little poster over there. makes me feel good. And probably, who's done the best in the team during the month, they might give them, a day off or something, or just some extra points, some extra credits. That's how employee recognition programs would work. Then how to instill appropriate behavior. So when a new associate comes in, for example, I gave you that, there's a jar of blue candies and you put in a red candy in, you need to explain that red candy that there are certain ways in which this organization already functions. So there's a certain way that the employee would, or the associate is expected to behave. And that's only going to happen with, proper training. So there are different training systems that associates usually go through during the first 2 weeks of coming into a new company, wherein they're understanding what the organization does, how it functions, different, sectors to the organization. Apart from his team, how many teams are in the organization, if it's a bigger organization per se, and how employees need to behave with one another as well. So employee relations come into picture. You have performance management coming in that helps associates understand how to behave in that organization culture. Then you have mutually supportive HR strategies. Again, this is wherein HR strategies align with the overall business strategy. We've spoken about this. And the components would include integration of recruitment and training programs. So how we can align recruitment along with our training team. So for example, the training team would say that you're recruiting people who have no knowledge about IT systems, and we are a tech-based organization. So I would expect you to recruit people who are familiar or have an IT background or have worked in an organization that has an IT background. Because someone who's working, for say, in an educational system comes inside a tech company and they are not able to function, even though we provide them appropriate training, it's really difficult to make them understand how the organization functions. This is how the training team and the recruitment team can integrate to come up with one little goal in mind, having the appropriate associates for that job role. Then ethical considerations in HR strategies. So there are different HR practices and strategies that are available. I think it's HR's responsibility to make sure that as a culture, you are having a diverse and inclusive culture, and you're also being fair and transparent to your associates in terms of having the appropriate HR strategies, making sure that your associates, for example, if they're taking sick leaves, they're properly compensated and they're taken care of. So that is the fair HR strategy that an organization needs to come up with. Your, for example, fair and equitable compensation practices. So you need to have a fair compensation practice, and you also need to look at, per se, gender pay parity for if male associates in the organization and female associates in the organization are fairly paid or not, and if the associates in general are fairly paid for the amount of job and workload that's coming in or not. So that is how HR looks at proper compensation and fair compensation practices. So we spoke about how HR helps in instilling an appropriate behavior. So looking at resourcing, so recruitment strategies need to look at associates who might work within the mix or work within the team as a whole. So in the onboarding process, when you're having new employees come in, you already let them know that this is how the team functions, or this is what the culture is, this is how it's going to work like. Then having a proper reward system. So obviously fairly compensating them with, if you have a high performing associate, you're going to fairly award them with proper compensation benefits and a good package basically. And also how rewards is linked to the achievement of strategic objectives. So if you're coming up with a strategy, say that we want to have more sales or grow as a business, obviously we need to reward our associates with the same. Maybe have a bonus that comes up during Christmas time because there's going to be more workload. So that's how we reward them correctly. Then learning and development. So continuously, it's HR's responsibility to train their associates with the proper skill set that they are required to, function well in their job role, and how to align those training programs with the associate's career path. For example, you work in marketing, and as a career plan, you started from the bottom and now you're looking at being a marketing manager. So how can the company, or basically the HR, put in different strategies in place that the associate gets all the resources needed and has proper training for him to be a proper manager? To be a proper marketing manager, you obviously need to have marketing skills. Probably he has marketing skills, but to be a manager, you also need people management skills. I feel managing people is an art, and not everyone has that. So having training programs to push him into, all right, you want to be a manager, you need to have these skills. You need to be able to handle 10 associates. You need to be able to distribute your job in such a way and not have too much on your plate, but have more on your associates' plate and have a look at what they're doing when you're a manager. Because when you're working as a manager, you're not only getting your job done, but you're also keeping an eye on the other associates that are under you, if they are properly being able to do their job or not, and if they are having the proper resources and having all of the information for them to do their job correctly or not. Then you have mutually supportive HR strategies wherein they are aligning with the goals of the business. So we spoke about how integration of the recruitment and the training team comes up, wherein there are different training programs that can be developed to bridge the skills gap. So if the recruitment team has hired someone that can work really well with the team but might not have all of the skills required, so how the training programs can be modified into a way wherein that skill gap bridge is fulfilled. Then again, coordination of compensation and benefit strategies. So you coordinate your comp and benefit strategies to how your employees can perform because of probably more workload, and how you can reach the strategic goals by doing that. And also look at employee well-being and satisfaction. Then you have alignment of performance management with organization goals. So you need to ensure that all of your performance management, how you're managing your associates and how they are putting work out, so their performance is aligning with eventually the organization being successful in the future, and how data is used to do that as well. Then you have some ethical considerations in the HR strategy. You need to ensure that they are properly compensated and fairly valued. So we spoke about this just in the slide above, like 2 slides above, and how, we should have a proper pay parity and also transparency in terms of, associates know that they're being fairly paid, and even the others in the organization along with them are getting paid a certain amount for the job that they're doing. So everything is transparent over here. Then you need to have a non-discriminatory recruitment and promotion policy. For example, non-discriminatory in the friends. For example, if you're working in the UK in the recruitment team and you're like, all right, I might not hire someone who needs a visa sponsorship because that's additional cost. So I will not hire someone like that. That is a direct discrimination, because you're discriminating against someone who might have all the skills and can work beautifully and give you so many returns, but just because they need little a visa sponsorship, little additional cost, you're discriminating and being like, no, I'm not going to go ahead with such associates. So you might not even talk to them or have an interview with any of them who require a visa sponsorship. Then you need to be transparent about the communication for HR policy. So there are certain policies that HR comes up with, and how they came up with or how the decision was made needs to come up with a lot of transparency, because associates need to know why this policy is being put in place. And they are free to, ask questions and clarify. So, employees to express concerns and seek clarification on HR matters. For example, you come up to me and you're like, what is the pension scheme? And how is this going to work? And why am I contributing every month? What is going to happen at the end? How am I going to get it if I move to a new company? There are few questions that you have, right? As the HR team, I'm supposed to address all of these matters and explain everything in detail with you. Or, for example, you're looking at your pay slip and there are so many different components. There is, this XYZ tax that's been deducted. There's pension, there is, your loan. There's so many things going on in your pay slip. And you're like, you're a new associate who has just joined the organization. And you're like, all right, how do I even read my payslip properly because it's so confusing? Maybe come back to HR and be like, can you please explain me how to do it properly? So there are few different things that HR needs to explain in terms of explaining employee concerns. So again, in conclusion, the HR strategy and the strategic HR initiatives need to, work in hand, and they are very important components of the organization's success and need to be aligned fairly, so that if they are aligned, that can only be a strong foundation for a high performance culture and organization success. Then you're going to evaluate the influence of strategic HR initiatives to create cultures of high performance in the organization. So I said there are a few things that are going to be repeated. So this is what I was talking about. We spoke about employee engagement and commitment, but we're looking at how it has a positive impact. And also, fine, you put in employee engagement and commitment as one of your goals that you're looking at. You even put a different HR strategy in place for that. But how do you measure that? So how do you measure if associates are engaged enough or committed to the organization? And looking at employee recognition programs, you have done that, but did the associates feel that they were looked at? Did they feel that this was actually something that mattered to them? So how do you do that? You have employee surveys, and you help them to participate in different development programs to see that did did that initiative actually help or not as a whole. Going on to performance management. So obviously that has a positive impact in the sense that, you have set up clear expectations from your associates. You're telling them how they need to manage their performance or how they need to put their output on by giving proper feedback. But how do you measure it if that has actually made a change or not? You look at different performance metrics, then you look at the goal achievement rates and different mechanisms of how feedback can be provided. You can look at having an interview, for example, a quick one, a stay interview, say. So associates that have just joined the organization, it's been what, 6 months since they've joined the organization. They're pretty comfortable with their job role, they've understood everything, and they're working properly. Now, how do you know if that associate feels comfortable enough and satisfied or not? You might have a stay interview with them, which means that you have probably like a questionnaire or a section wherein you're asking specific questions to them and be like, do you feel comfortable? Do you think your manager is helping you out? Do you feel you have all of the resources that are needed to do your job role correctly? Certain questions that you can ask that makes them feel like, all right, it's been 6 months here, and these people actually care, like they're checking up on me and want to know that if I am able to do my job correctly or not and need proper feedback. So that would motivate their associates to do better just because we are caring as a company for them. Then learning and development. Obviously, learning and development, the impact would be that, you're putting in innovation inside them. They're more adaptable. They're more comfortable with, doing their job roles because they have the skill sets. But how do you measure it if that has actually made a change or not? So you can obviously track the participation rate in the training programs. So if you put in a training program on and you send it across, okay, and you're like, this is every associate needs to do this or something, that's different. But if you put in a training program wherein associates can choose if they want to go through that training program or not, you might know who is actually interested to grow amongst, like, as a whole, as a person, to do better in the organization. And you might know who actually is not that engaged. There are few certain associates that might not even care about what training program is going on. They just need to do their job and leave. That's when you know that maybe that associate might be a little disengaged. Then you have a rewards and recognition program wherein you have a proper reward system that aligns with the performance and the organization goals, so that you help the associates in a high performance culture. And how do you measure that? So you analyze the correlation, or the relation between the recognition programs and employee satisfaction. So even though you have these recognition programs in place, do you think your associates are being properly satisfied or not? You'll let to know probably from a turnover rate. If there's a low turnover rate, you know that your associates in the organization are satisfied enough for them not to leave the organization. Then moving on to organization communication. Like we spoke about, really positive impact because everything is transparent. Associates are happy, they know everything that's going around. And how do you evaluate it? Proper communication channels. If you have proper way that you're getting employee feedback and, you know, response to the changes that are happening. If there's a new HR strategy, how the associates respond. That's how you can measure it. Then talent acquisition and retention. We spoke about how recruitment plays an important role to get a high performing workforce. So how do you do that? You see eventually what are the turnover rates? How are the strategies that recruitment has been used aligning with the business strategies and the organizational needs? Then you have ethical considerations, wherein you're putting proper HR practices in place, you're being fair to everyone. So how do you measure that? You see how employees feel. You might see how, you know, ethical standards are used to make HR decisions. So how do you do that? You see that, you know, through probably, like I spoke about, the stay interview, asking that, you know, do you feel that everything's fair? Do you feel that comfortable you're working here? That's how you can do that. Alignment with business strategy. So we spoke how HR needs to be aligned with a business strategy for the organization goals. So that has a positive impact, obviously. But how do you measure it? So you see that as a new HR strategy comes up, how it is impacting the organization goals and how is it impacting the eventual growth rate or success rate of the organization. Then we spoke about how HR needs to be flexible and adaptable, but how do you measure it? So, you know, you measure it by seeing your responsiveness rate, basically organizations being proactive to market change. And you measure it by employee feedback that, you know, employees can see, you know, firsthand if an organization is being adaptable to or not. Then leadership development. So it's important to make a proper leadership plan, and that's going to determine the culture of the organization. But how do you measure that? So you measure it by, you know, if the leadership, or, you know, leadership basically is the highest, maybe 10 members, the CEOs of the company. How effective are they? You know, if they, for example, if they're saying something really positive in a meeting wherein all 2,000 employees are watching, how impactful the leader is and how is he successful in putting out key roles outside. So basically, there are different HR strategies and initiatives that can help to create a culture of high performing organization. And, you know, there are different ways in which you can measure it and come up with it, and how it can have a positive impact, maybe a negative impact, and how you measure that and see how performance culture aligns with the strategic objectives. And obviously, you know, continuously checking your strategies or monitoring it, like, all right, this is the strategy we put out, was it successful or not? That also plays a very important role. So this is again what we spoke about, but talking about the strengths and the weaknesses of it. So strengths in terms of alignment with organization strategy. If HR strategies are aligned with the organization, obviously you're gonna look at a goal-oriented culture, and it just helps with the overall organization's performance, right? But as a weakness, you can see that lack of alignment might end up having, you know, disjointed efforts, wherein HR is like putting efforts to do a certain task, and the organization as a whole is also making certain changes to work towards the same task. So if they put their forces together and work as a team, maybe the goals would be much better. So that's how disjointed efforts just does not work. And you have strategic misalignment, wherein the organization might think at growing, whereas HR might think at employee retention. So they might not align strategically, and that might create issues again. Then you have employee engagement and commitment. Obviously, engaged employees would give out high performance, and they will also contribute more because they're going to be motivated. Whereas as a weakness, you know, it can be that we are not able to address specific needs of a diverse group. For say, there was a specific festival like Eid, and we did not, as an HR team, we did not celebrate that, but we celebrated every other festival. We celebrated Diwali, we celebrated Christmas, we celebrated all of the festivals apart from Eid. So that might be offensive to that specific diverse group. So that's just an example that you can think of. And then again, poorly executed HR strategies might also end up being eventually bad for the organization, because you have thought about a strategy but you don't put it properly in place, so that's never going to work out and help as an organization. Then performance management. Obviously, as a strength, performance management would lead to high performance in the end. And if you set clear expectations with your associates, they're going to look at continuous improvement. But as a weakness, you're looking at how associates would feel that, because you're just looking at numbers but you're not seeing the qualitative aspect of how I'm performing. It's I feel that's unfair. And then again, poorly implemented performance management systems might obviously create fear amongst associates, because I remember I read somewhere that one organization had implemented in place a software which tracks the productivity of associates during lockdown. So since everyone was working from home, this organization came up with an idea, or basically a software, that did tracked how much work an associate is doing, or productive hours that the associate is putting in. For example, if you aimlessly scroll over the laptop and not really do work, or you're probably scrolling through your phone and just keeping your laptop active, that software would detect that. But if you're properly working on a presentation or doing your Excel, that software will show you being productive. So that created a sense of fear amongst associates, because even though they're looking on Google for fresh ideas, or just looking through Google because their managers has told them to do a specific task, that was not taken as productive, because you're not clearly working on something. So definitely, poorly implemented performance management system would create a lot of problems. Then you have learning and development. So there are continuously changes that are happening, and associates need to be adaptable, and different skills that they need to develop. But as a weakness, it might also result in inadequate training, because associates might just skim through the training program really quick, like, all right, this is a checklist task that I need to train. I need to get this training done by this week. Let's just go through quickly and not really read anything. And then they might not really link the initiatives with the goals, and might impact the performance as well. Then you have rewards and recognition, wherein we spoke about the strengths being a proper reward system can motivate associates to perform better, and a proper recognition program can have associates move towards what they need and looking at different achievements they have. Whereas as a weakness, having a inadequate reward system might lead to demotion and resentment, because people would not be happy in the organization then that they're not being paid enough. And there should be an emphasis on the extrinsic rewards and the intrinsic motivation factors that limit effectiveness in the organization. So basically, associates in the organization are motivated by specific factors. You have different associates being motivated for different things. One associate might not be motivated with everything. So when you talk about what is an extrinsic reward, so extrinsic reward usually has monetary value to it, or basically given to an associate that is achieving something in the organization. So that is what an extrinsic reward is. But intrinsic factors or reward systems or motivators would be pushing an associate to complete a specific job role, or motivating them to do a specific thing. So intrinsic rewards are more psychological in nature, wherein you're more working on how the associate feels in the organization, how confident the associate is in the organization, and different actions that they're taking in terms of their personal satisfaction, their pride, their self-esteem. That is what intrinsic motivating factors look like. And extrinsic factors are basically monetary factors that an organization can give out more, a bonus or increase in your salary. That is extrinsic rewards, whereas intrinsic rewards, sorry, are psychological in nature. Then you have some ethical considerations that we spoke about, wherein HR has a fair practice and, there's proper trust and employee commitment. But if there's a lack of it, then it might lead to, not proper or inconsistent decisions that are coming up with, and, only looking at short-term gains instead of looking at the long-term goals eventually. So again, we're looking at different HR strategies that create a high performance organization. So looking at the positives and negatives of that specific HR strategy needs to be taken or needs to be considered, so that there can be different ideas or different strengths and weaknesses that we look at. So from before we come up with a strategy to see like, all right, if this is a weakness, how can we overcome it, or how can we not get to that position in the first place? Then you're looking at how, different HR initiatives help to again create high performance culture. So you are looking at development of a comprehensive HR strategy. We spoke about how having a comprehensive strategy which aligns with the business goals is going to be helpful, because it's going to look at high performance culture eventually. And that strategy is going to be the roadmap basically for the interventions, because if the strategy is not adaptable or does not align with the goals, it's not going to be helpful. We spoke about how HR needs to invest in the employee development programs. So you need to help with training, development continuously, because it helps to create, a positive workforce. Just going through this quickly because we already went through all of these. And then I'm going to move on for the last 5 minutes for the case study. That's why as well. We speak about how we implement the effective performance management system. So having a proper performance management system wherein you're tracking everything fairly is important. Then you have a culture of open communication. How we spoke, associates can fairly communicate amongst themselves and with their managers. Everything's transparent. HR comes up with transparency as well. That'll push people to perform better. Then you create incentive structures that align with performance. If you have a proper reward and recognition program in place, you're going to have associates that are going to perform better and have high performing associates. Then you have to establish ethical guidelines and practices. So HR needs to have a fair practice across and have transparency and look at all the ethical considerations before making any changes or new strategies. Then you invest in leadership development. So your leaders or your top CEOs that are in the organization need to develop themselves continuously as well and adapt to the changing market. Then you promote diversity and inclusion. You promote a diverse workplace wherein you have people coming in from different cultures working together. There are different age groups working together so that there's harmony among the organization and everyone is included. And you monitor and adapt HR interventions. That means that you're continuously having a lookout for all of the changes that were made in terms of HR strategies, and are they relevant or not, and even are they effective or making any change or helping the organization's goals in the end. So you need to have a tracking or monitoring of it. And you encourage a flexible and adaptable work environment. So, you have people working from home sometimes, people being flexible in terms of their job, getting everything done. So agile workforce is definitely better equipped and they contribute better to a better, high successful organization. So again, implementing these different high performance culture, ideas that you're putting in is that's eventually aligning with the strategic objectives is really important, because eventually every business is different and has different unique challenges, but it's HR strategies that can align with them and look at the business goal in the end. And also we have to monitor and track the effectiveness of these over time. So we're done with the slides over here. I have a quick case study that I want to go through before we get done with this call. Just give me a second. Yep. So I'm going to be talking about the London School of Economics. So just to give you an overall of what London School of Economics is, it's one of the top UK universities. It's ranked second in the world for social sciences and management subjects. So it's quite well known. It was LSE had different strategies that they came up with. And because there was lockdown as well in 2020, they had different strategies for lockdown eventually as well. Because of these certain strategies that they came up with beforehand, or basically they were proactive, they currently have a total of 350 million. That is where their business is currently, just because of specific strategies that they came up with. And then they obviously made certain developments and constructed a new campus and made changes to it, because obviously they were growing. But they came up with different strategies in 2020, keeping the next 5 to 10 years in mind. So if you're looking at the HR strategy and process that they came up with, this is what we need to look at as HR. So they basically came up with 6 core pillars of the HR activity or the HR strategies that they're going to look at. So they were going to look at delivering operational effectiveness and infrastructure, then building an excellent workforce, enhancing the reward, benefits, and recognition strategies, strengthening employee engagement and well-being, enhancing rewards, benefits, and recognition, and providing a grounded HR. It says HR police. They eventually basically mean a grounded HR team that is not just grounded in the sense doing things from the roots, because as a university they were traditional, but also looking at the different changes that are coming in and are there or are approachable enough for me to go in and ask questions and them giving me advice and support. So these are the 6 core pillars that they kept in mind when they were looking at the next 5 to 10 years in place. So in 2020, they came up with these and looked at making changes to the strategy in 2023. And 5 to 10 years might seem such a long time for an educational institute, basically, because as an educational institute, you keep changing, you keep having new research coming up, you have so many changes happening. But this eventually was done because there is a lot of flexibility. Then you can work around these 6 core pillars. You can make changes within these 6 core pillars in those 5 to 10 years that you're looking at. And these pillars basically help the growth of the business eventually. So if they're delivering operational effectiveness and infrastructure, how are they doing it? They're continuously improving the systems and workflows. So in those 5 to 10 years, there might be changes coming up. For example, in the last 3 years, AI has boomed in the market. There have been so many changes that are happening in the market for AI. Or if I take something that's not theory-based, like vapes in the market have suddenly boomed up in the last 2 to 3 years. So there are continuous changes that are taking in the market as a trend. So how they put one pillar in place, but that pillar is adapting in the way that in these 5 to 10 years, they're continuously going to make changes to the system and be in par with the outside environment, basically. And they're going to keep improving the quality of the information and data that's available to their school as support. So they're going to keep making changes to the data. They're going to refreshing data. They're going to look at new information coming in every time and making their decision based on the data that they have. Then to build an excellent workforce, they're obviously going to recruit people that are having the correct skill sets for the organization, for the current job role, but also how they can look at attracting better candidates. So they started this entire recruitment drill wherein they were posting different videos of the campus. They were posting different reviews from people working over there. They were posting reviews from lecturers that were working in the college at that time, saying that how, as a college, LSE is so it worries so much about its associates. So that's how they attracted better talent as well. Because when, for example, if I'm an outsider and I see the video and I'm like, all right, this person is working here and looks so happy and content, maybe they actually care a lot about, the associates in the organization. Maybe I should apply over here and see if I can get a job as well, because my organization doesn't care. This is just one of an example that, that might go in the person's head. So that's how they attracted proper talent. And they're continuously developing work culture, because they understand that, they need to make changes to their work culture every time and encourage staff to be better. Then how they enhanced the rewards and benefits system was they continuously made changes to it and properly make sure that, hard work was recognized. And they made developments to the strategies so that it differentiates themselves from its peers, or basically its competitors. So they always had an upper hand in terms of, different strategies or benefit strategies. LSC was one of the organizations that came up with the paternity policy as well. So that's a benefit strategy that they came up with as well, which just gave them the upper hand over the others in the market. Then how did they strengthen employee engagement and well-being? So in the college or the school, basically, they increased employee engagement by more participation and focusing on well-being of staff. But they also looked at making different changes to the operational policy that they were looking at, and how they can improve, diversity and have inclusion from all across the world. That's what they were looking at. Then they increased their recognition system as well. And that helped the organization as a whole, I feel. Then providing grounded HR policy and advice and support. I just realized that enhancing reward and benefits and recognition and enhancing reward benefits is the same thing. So technically it's 5 core pillars and not 6, because this is repeated again. Anyways, providing grounded HR policy and advice. So they had a proper HR team in place that always looked at having a good practice. So when I say HR good practice, I'm looking at an associate is sick and is suffering from cancer, for say, all right? They are sick for the last 3-4 months. A good HR practice would be following up with them, having catch up meetings with them monthly, or probably bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, one meeting, looking at their well-being meetings, that, all right, how are you feeling? Are you doing well? When do you think you can return? Do you think you even have return in the near future? That would be good HR practice. If you're looking at not so good HR practice, it would be, all right, not catching up with them, not having a well-being, letting them be disengaged from the organization, not looking after the associates in the terms like, all right, are you doing better? Are you going to return? Having a return to work plan in place. There's no plan in place. That's going to be a negative aspect of that. So having a positive HR practice is obviously going to help the associates. And having a proactive HR team that can give proper advice and support as well was really important for the success of LSC. So these were the 5 pillars that I wanted to go through really quickly in this case study. It just explains how that strategy helped them that I spoke about, and how did they implement it, because putting in so many strategies was obviously not easy, especially in short term. So they had to be proactive with everything, and how is it going to help in the future eventually. So just a quick thing that I wanted to go through. But yeah, this is the end of the session today, unless you have any questions for me.
No questions.
No problem at all. I hope you enjoyed this presentation today, and I'll meet you tomorrow for the next session, Nandesh. All right?
Okay.
Take care. Bye. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day too.